there's a law of physics that says to every action, there's a reaction. And what that law didn't say is the impact of that reaction. Now, Nigeria has joined the very tiny list of countries that have banned Twitter. And the reaction is something that a lot of people across the continent and even in the country have been talking about. International communities are also, weighing in on this particular one, as well as religious organizations. Well, today on The Square, we'll be speaking with lawyers, and you will be amazed that everyone will be speaking from the point of law, but they're also in opposite divide. Welcome, I'm Sulaima. Just last week, specifically June 4, the Nigerian government announced the suspension of Twitter, arguably the world's biggest microblogging platform and one of the biggest social media platforms in the world. The decision followed the removal of Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari's tweet on Thursday. Now, the tweet where the president was alleged to have made statements that violated Twitter rules and were capable of inciting trouble was yanked off by the platform. Now, in a swift reaction to Twitter's actions, the Nigerian government ordered telecommunications companies in the country to block Nigerians' access to the platform as it suspended Twitter's operations. Now, this decision, although followed by these companies, was described as a contravention of the United Nations position that the rights held by people offline must be respected online. Now, Nigerians have also roundly criticized this decision and tagged it an attempt to gag the people and also limit their right to free speech. The Nigerian government says Twitter's removal of the president's tweet and its other actions were disappointing, a show of double standard, and were also capable of undermining Nigeria's corporate existence. Now, the whole world is talking about Nigeria and Twitter, the transparency of its operations and the approach of the Nigerian government on Village Square Africa. I have lined up a group of experts who will help us as well as unpack it all. Now, joining me now is Daniel Bwala. He's a lawyer and member of Lincoln's Inn, London. He joins me from the UK. And of course, Liborous Oshoma, legal practitioner. Later on the show, I'll be having Nnenna Ifeanyi-Ajufo, a lecturer of law and technology, and Yusuf, Jimoh, Aweda, Microsoft Certified Technology Specialist. Now, quickly, good to have both of you here, Daniel and Liborous. Now, the most interesting thing is that everyone reacted when that news broke last week in Nigeria. Let me start with you. You were away, and you're still away, Daniel. How did you receive the news when it first broke?
Well, thank you for having me, and good evening. What I heard, as soon as the federal government made the announcement, I got a call from Punch to grant an interview where I gave my candid opinion in respect of the matter. Even though at the time I didn't have available facts. So my position at the time was that the ban would depend on circumstances and facts of the case. But after 24 hours, we have at least reasonable facts for us to form our opinion, which are that, number one, the context in which the president, or rather the government of Nigeria, made the decision was that the president's tweet was deleted. And then the Nigerian government drew on they deleted it actually, they said it violated their community rule. The Nigerian government drew the attention of Twitter to several posts and tweets by, I don't want to glorify the person by mentioning his name, but somebody who is leading a secessionist movement. And some of the posts actually were connected to the violence or killing of police people and the rest. And federal government pointed that out on Twitter, and Twitter responded by saying they reviewed it, and they found out, they come to the determination that the tweets did not violate their rule. Sadly, after the Nigerian got hit on them, yesterday they deleted that. So that made the case for the government. I support the decision of the federal government to temporarily ban Twitter. It is not a ban forever, and it is not novel. It is what has happened over 27 countries of the world have had their beefs with Twitter.
I'll come back to you, Daniel. I just wanted you to tell us, your reaction, to that news when it broke. Let me quickly come back to Lagos here in Nigeria, where Liborous is. And Liborous, your reaction to that particular, action from Nigeria?
Yeah, I thought it was a joke when I first heard it, because to me it was comical, very, very comical. And then I want to quickly correct a narrative. The Nigerian government never wrote to Twitter complaining about Nnamdi Kanu's tweets, as at when the president's Twitter was yanked off. The video was yanked off Twitter. Nigerian government never wrote to Twitter, and Twitter never responded. So let's not twist facts. Twitter never responded to the Nigerian government that the tweet did not violate their rules. That said, because those same tweets had been deleted by Twitter. So if Twitter had responded, why would they be deleting tweets that they had answered that didn't violate their rules? That's on one side. Secondly, I thought it was comical. When I heard it, I thought it was one of those comedy skits, because I would have expected that in this day and age when Nigeria is going through crisis, where even police cases, murder cases that police is unable to resolve, have been resolved using Twitter. When Section 22 of the Constitution has encouraged citizens using every media platform, media agency to hold government accountable. A situation where it is becoming daily difficult to live in Nigeria. I had expected that government will show the path of diplomacy, but unfortunately, I was shocked when I found out that it was true, and I later heard Elijah Mohammed's press statement. And for me, and that's why everybody's talking about it, for me, it was quite unfortunate. It was not the path to toe at all for a nation as Nigeria that is grappling with everything wrong with a modern nation. I think it was an advice, a misadvice by the handlers of the president's media.
Let me bring in Daniel here quickly. Daniel, you've heard your colleague Liborous saying that, it was a bad move, a bad action by the government. Initially, he thought it wasn't real, but now it's been so established that it's real, and the government is still pushing that particular action, as we've seen from the regulatory body for broadcasting in the country has also weighed in. Tell us quickly, do you think Twitter, in the first place, was right to have removed the tweet of the president and, vis-a-vis the president's action banning Twitter in Nigeria?
Well, I guess I will, but let me quickly correct what the speaker said. Nigeria did not write by going right of shut. Twitter's mode of complaint is not by right. You go to the Twitter page and there is a format where you lodge a complaint. That's the federal government did. And Twitter responded, because all over the Twitter page is where it responded that it was going to review what Nigerian people complained about. And then it was also all over Twitter where they said they have reviewed the post and they found that it did not violate their rules. So it is not like you write an official letter. And these factors, I'm saying, can be verified. It's all over the social media. That's one. Then the decision of Twitter to delete the tweet of the president. One is that if the tweet violates their policy, definitely they will delete irrespective of who you are. They've done that with Donald Trump. But the case Nigeria did was that his statement, the content of the president did not violate the rule. The question is, what are the Twitter rules? One, when you make comments about something that is obscene, you make comments about something that will incite violence, I think I have about 4 or 5. None of these tweets, none of those rules fall within the context of what the president said. That is number one. But assuming without considering that the president's tweet provoked them, or violated their rule. That was why the federal government drew the attention of that to similar to, not even similar, one tweet that was published by one fellow and Twitter reverted back and said no violation. But that aside, the issue is that Twitter is inconsistent in its application of the rules. Because what we are learning now, they are shifting goalposts. At the beginning, they said that when the rules are violated, they take a decision. Now they've shifted the goalposts and say that the decision is almost always premised on complaints lodged by people. That when you have people that lodge complaints, then they will take decision. Then I ask myself the question, if in one breath you say you have a standard rule that when somebody fails, you delete the tweet, there are more than 5 billion tweets right now that have violated their rules and they're taking those steps. If they say they will wait up to the complaint is lodged and that their decision is premised on complaint, that means once there is an online mob action, as was asserted by the professor of Harvard University, when there is an online mob action regarding the tweet, it doesn't matter whether it meets their requirement or whether it violates their rule or not, because it's a mob action, they will now take a decision to delete the tweet. And importantly, why Nigeria did the same is because the case of Twitter is exceptional, because the founder of Twitter, Jagos, is adjudged to be involved in activities of Nigeria without explaining or expressing the motive behind it. It is on record. He participated in the NSAS protest last year when he tweeted the tweet that was made as to the means of generating funds.
I'll come back to you, Daniel, so that you can stretch that, because you've actually put it, you've actually taken it to another angle, putting Jack Dorsey on the spot. Let me quickly bring in Liborous before we start talking about the activities of Jack, whether he's a person of interest or not. Liborous, listening to Daniel, he said, he's been able to clarify that, which a lot of people also saw. So it's not the formal, way of letter writing, communication to Twitter, but the government did the same thing via same Twitter. Do you think the presidency should, in the first place, have gone to Twitter to make or to address Nigerians about issues, around the country, especially when the president was talking about, the bad experience of Nigerians in the civil war fought by the country. Do you think Twitter was the best place for the president to have addressed the nation?
Yeah, Sulaima, please let me correct an impression. I still want to go back there before I answer your question. Even though I didn't hear Bwala very clearly, its line is muffled, I can barely hear him there. I also, because I had listened to him on another platform where he was referring to a fake tweet as a response from Twitter. I expected him to refer to the same tweet here, but he didn't, because he probably had corrected as a fake tweet. That's what was Twitter's response. At least he referred to federal government's complaint on Twitter. What was his Twitter's response to that complaint? I expected him also to refer to it. And then now, even the president, coming to the president's statement, really, I, for one, I wouldn't have seen anything wrong with that statement if the president had used that statement consistently as regards the incessant killings and kidnapping going on in every part of the country. When it happened in Niger State, what was the president's statement? He had the same Twitter. He's appealing to the kidnappers to lay down their arms and negotiate and embrace peace and release those that they are holding captive. The president did not say that he would take the war against banditry to those people. When he was in Nasarawa State, the president admonished that the people who are mourning their dead should live at peace with those that have killed them senselessly. It has been the same pattern. But when it comes to the South, the president will talk. President Buhari ought to be the president of those that voted for him and those that didn't vote for him. The moment he became sectional, people are going to view him with suspicion. People are going to read different meaning to his utterances, no matter how altruistic. That is what caused that anger. Because this is the same president that is begging bandits. And then you come to agitation. People are saying that they do not have a fair share in the entity called Nigeria, even though this is by no means supporting the burning down of public institutions and killing of policemen. I would have expected that the president used the same stick that he's using in the east, in the north. Once you have done that, people will know you to be a president that will not tolerate banditry, killings, or lawlessness, irrespective of tribe or tongue. But the moment you begin to select where to use the stick and where to use the carrot, you're definitely going to raise suspicion. I'll give you an example quickly. When Professor Yemi-Osinbajo, the vice president, acted as acting president, we saw how he was able to calm nerves. He went to Owerri, marched on the streets of Owerri. He was in Port Harcourt, had town hall meeting in Port Harcourt, marched on the street of Yenagoa. The tension that was so high died down. But the moment the president came, he started talking tough, breathing down the neck of IPOB. And so those boys that you radicalize, throwing in the gutters, asking to jump in the gutters, will, by extension, would be matured someday and would want to bear arms against the state because they feel they have no stake in the state. That's basically what is playing out here. And then coming to the issue of Twitter ban, what it means is that the president does not know how to comply with rules. APC did not comply with INEC rules. It cost them the election in Port Harcourt and in Zamfara. And today, the same president has failed to comply with rules. He is rather saying, no, I didn't comply with the rule. Also, this other man did not comply with the rule. And then your account is suspended for 12 hours, and the next thing is to deprive your people. Do you know, Sulai, do you know the number of people that are earning a living on Twitter daily in a country that we have not been able to provide jobs for people? Recently, the young girl that was killed in Cross River State, police, if not for Twitter, police would have still have been unable to solve that.
Let me bring in Daniel here. Daniel, you've heard Liborous. He's talked about the president having, a different approach to solving, security situation in the country. And he said that if the president had the same approach across the country, no one would have picked holes in his comment on that day.
I was wondering whether you were going to give me time, equal time like the time given to you, but that's by the way. What he said regarding the president's application of force differently is false and misleading. It is the same president who on the same Twitter page announced that he has ordered the army to shoot at sight, this is referring to Zamfara, to shoot aside any bandit they see in the bush. On the same Twitter page, it was the same president on the same Twitter page who also announced that I have directed that all movement of, I think, aircraft or something above the skies of Zamfara should stop. It was the same president. Now, I don't know how, I didn't actually know that one can derive from the subject of conversation to go to the issue of East-West, because that's not actually what I am prepared to talk about. But I'll be happy to respond since he has raised the issue, which is first to debunk the assertion that the president applied this law differently. I have just told you from the same Twitter, the president announced that he has ordered the army to shoot aside any bandits they see in the bush. And he has also ordered the stoppage of all air travels. And he did that when the governor of Zamfara was talking about possibility of negotiating with bandits. I don't know if Zamfara is in the south or Zamfara is somewhere outside of the country, but that is the same application. That is number one. Then number two, regarding the president not obeying rules. You see, what happened with the president president's tweet being removed that led to the decision to suspend Twitter is just like the last straw that broke the camel's back. I know those who are online, who are consistently online monitoring events for more than 2-3 months. The Minister of Information has consistently been complaining about the usage of Twitter by that individual who was inciting violence. And it is really intriguing that whenever these pundits and speakers, whom I respect greatly, when they come to talk about the rights and the wrongs of the president, you will never see them apply the same calling out principle on the individuals who are causing the mayhem in our country by virtue of what you are doing. Let's come to the issue of the Twitter and the economic value that it puts. The truth of the matter is that Twitter is not a legal personality. We all are agreeable to the fact that it promotes commerce, it can promote engagement, and the possibilities of Twitter are limitless. And Nigeria is not in any way saying we don't want Twitter. The president is doing what all other presidents in advanced democracy, and I wish that he will counter these facts. The president is doing what all advanced democracies did with Twitter when Twitter violated their local laws. The anti-hate speech, the anti-hate crime bill of France as it speaks, I think it's section 18 or 22 or something thereabout, it states in clear terms that all social media platforms have 48 hours from when an obscene publication is published for them to take it down, or else they face penalty. Now, in Russia, when the president of Russia gave Twitter the ultimatum to take down some of the tweets, he said, if you fail to do it, we will not only block all the IPs, we will troll all your activities across all devices. Now, in England, David Cameron in 2011 also threatened to shut down Twitter when that London riot broke out after the death of Mike Duggan. And in fact, Daily Telegraph, that's why I'm even surprised with Nigerian journalists, Daily Telegraph of UK, rather than criticizing the decision of David Cameron to shut down Twitter, that threat, they said and published around the time that Twitter was promoting gang violence. You see, the CNN that we are talking about, when the people they call insurrectionists took the protest to the Capitol Hill, CNN remembered patriotism. Now, the free press in Nigeria, the only problem I have with free press in Nigeria is very few of them are very balanced in their analysis. They dance as the occasion serves. If you go on Twitter that we are talking, because I'm tweeting from the UK, all over the world, the same way I'm seeing tweets criticizing the government, I'm also seeing tweets from UK, from US, from Canada, celebrating the decision of the president. Do you know why? Because right now, there is a growing conversation in America that the free speech is now becoming a bound speech in the hands of social media owners. Because one, they manipulate algorithm and determine what you read, the opinion you form, and the opinion you express. And what they do, and they do that for commercial purpose. They did that in different elections, at least data analytics has been able to open that up to us. And in one breath, Twitter say you are promoting free speech. So where do you get the power to create a rule that does not have universal application, and then you can delete the tweet of people? I thought that free speech is the freedom to say whatever you want to say, and whatever comes out of it in terms of civil liability or criminal liability is yours to face. So this inconsistency, and the part you do not, I don't want to say you do not want us to touch, but people are shying away from talking, is the man Jack Dorsey and his interest in Nigeria.
I'll get something straight here, Daniel. There's no part that we are not touching. I wanted us to get to that part. I think that will be the last part, but I wanted us to get into the Nigerian constitution. Both of you are lawyers, so that is why we're starting this conversation with both of you to look at it from the point of law and also get to analyze this from the international community. Quickly, Liborous, let's look at the Nigerian constitution before we start talking about Jack. What does the Nigerian constitution say about the actions so taken by the government?
Please, quickly, please. Raised about a growing concern, and London, France, and America investigating Twitter. In London, there were complaints, like he raised, but he didn't tell you that Twitter was dictatorially, for lack of a better word, banned for failing to take down a tweet. In America, Twitter, even Facebook, were summoned by the Congress and thoroughly investigated in matters relating to the election. That was not the case. That's not the case in Nigeria here. In Nigeria here, I also, mind you, on this same program just now, I condemn the activities of IPOB and the ESN, who have decided to take the laws into their hands in the Southeast. But that said, you see illegality begets illegality. Nigeria is a country that does not even protect the right and privileges of its citizens. So you find that in most cases, the citizens take the laws into their hands. That's not to encourage that. But that said, you're citing examples of areas where Twitter and social media are investigated. And here, what we have here is not even an investigation. What we have here is an outright ban and a high-handed decision, contrary to Section 22 of the Constitution. And permit me quickly, because you also raised the issue of constitutionality. And if you look at Section 22 of the Constitution, it says the press, radio, television, and other agencies of the mass media at all times be free to uphold the fundamental objectives contained in this chapter and uphold the responsibility and accountability of government to the people. And we all know also that these are names of people, the everyday person, because we do not have opposition. It is not gainsaying that we do not have opposition government in Nigeria. Our opposition government is dead, and so the people are the opposition.
Quickly, Liborous, I want you to put this into perspective, some of the things Daniel raised. Don't you think that Twitter has been biased, especially some of those tweets by former President Trump, and now looking at the comment from Twitter talking about free speech?
Yeah, free speech. Look, he's a lawyer. We are both lawyers. There is no universal free speech without limitation. Where your right stops is where mine begins, and where mine begins is where yours stops. So even when you talk about free speech, there are limitations to free speech. And free speech does not, just like Lord Dennis said, your rights, where your right to swing your hand begins, also does not stop me from protecting my eyes against that your hand that you're swinging. So in the same vein, when you say you're promoting free speech, does not mean that free speech will enable you to cross the line. I agree that Nnamdi Kanu's tweet most times and his state utterances cross the line. But we agree also that most of these comments of the President Buhari's comment, if there were no complaints and backlash against it, it probably wouldn't have been pulled down. And that's why what the government should do, like what is done in the societies that he had enumerated or mentioned, it's to ensure that both the lawmakers and the government is up and doing fair and equitable in all their dealings. And I insist and I maintain that when it comes to a section of the country, the government has been known to use the carrot approach, and when it comes to the other section, it uses the stick. And that is why there's this disparity and there's this outcry.
And Daniel, talking about Jack and his company, do you think that they suddenly have realized that they made a mistake? Because if you look at the tweet that has come up today on Twitter, it would seem as if now they say they would love to work with the Nigerian government. They would also look in deeply and more keenly. So how do you now bring this, looking at Jack as a person of interest in Nigeria?
Thank you. That is basically the antecedent of Twitter and Jack Dorsey. And I think that Nigeria must have seen how countries of the world, they had to stand their ground, and then Twitter will succumb. That same type of statement that they issued is similar to most of the countries that told them. And what Twitter does is they test your sovereignty. If you are weakened and you concede to their view, then it stays. But when you stand your ground, then they will look at their commercial value. Now, let me quickly say something. Number one, Liborous said that most of these advanced countries conducted investigation. No, it's only America that conducted investigation. Only America. Russia, France, England, and the rest, they communicated via the same means that the president communicated, because that is Twitter's official means of communication. You can't write a letter and send to them. It's a standard practice. But so the president of Nigeria did what other nations did, which is to lodge that complaint through the same. Now, the reason America did investigation is because the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, one is because all the companies are American companies. And then number two, they are American citizens. So the owners are American citizens. Number three, First Amendment has been decided by all the courts in America up to Supreme Court, that when it comes to the free speech, that it is a protected right against government, but not protected right against private individuals and owners of social media platforms. That matter went to court. So there is no way American government would have lodged the complaint through the same means that other countries have done because of the exceptionality of the First Amendment. But the investigation that America conducted was not premised on obscene tweets. They conducted the investigation based on the expose of data analytics that said that the 2016 election that gave birth to Donald Trump must have been influenced by the manipulation of algorithms that changed public perception and affected the election. That was what caused that investigation. If it is a tweet on Twitter, they will not need an investigation. It's a fact that is evidence of the face value. What they will do is they will lodge that official complaint. And Twitter said their standard procedure, they call it takedown request. Once a tweet or an account is obscene, you will now lodge the takedown request. Then they will review it. If you are right, they will take it down. If you are wrong, they will revert back to you and say it does not violate their rules. So it's a standard procedure, and the president did what other countries did. Now, coming back to the issue of Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey today has never participated in any and let me quickly correct another point, the constitutional provision that the learned lawyer read. You see, Twitter does not qualify as the press as contemplated by the provision of the Constitution. The press are people like you, Sulaima, and him, Liborous Oshoma, who have a platform where they report news. Let me finish. They report news, and one, they discuss opinion. Twitter is a platform. They don't announce, they don't report news. It's just a platform where...
But what Liborous is saying is that the action of the government today has actually, breached or infringed on the rights of a free press.
Exactly. Why is quickly, Sulai? Let me ask this question.
We're closing, gentlemen. I know we can push this on and on, but let's see how we can wrap up. Liborous, just a few seconds, and we'll let Dana close the show.
So, Sulaiman, please clarify the right of government that infringe. Is it against Twitter now or against journalists in Nigeria?
I actually wanted my producer to put up that tweet from Twitter so that we can see what they came up with. But quickly here, and that is it. Well, this is one of it. This is not the tweet from Twitter, but I actually wanted one exactly from Twitter. I think in the course of the program, we should be able to bring that out. A lot of people have been having this conversation, and I'm hoping that we can have both of you again to talk about this. It's always an interesting time, but I'll let you, Liborous, you were going to say something quickly, if we can do that in some few seconds.
Yeah, because we started with Bwala, it won't be nice for you to end with him. And he said Twitter is not...
I'm the anchor man. I choose to edit do I want.
Qualify. It does not qualify as a means of communication or whatever it is. But if you read the circular from the broadcasting organization and also the directive from the federal government that the broadcasting organization should take steps to register Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, including WhatsApp. So where do you now position that request in line with the statement of Bwala that it does not qualify as
quite frankly, Liborous, this is something that will be the talking point, across the world, not only in Nigeria, in the days to come. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for being such nice company. Liborous Oshoma and Dana Bwala, both legal practitioners. Thank you for your time. Coming up next is, Jimoh, Yusuf, Aweda, and Nnenna joining me to also look at this particular issue here on The Square. Jimoh, you must have seen some reactions from across the world, but notably, some tweets from Twitter, and I'd like to share those with you. And those are very key, as Twitter have come up to say, we are committed to peace, progress, and freedom of speech of the Nigerian people. We have reviewed our actions and are in communication with the Nigerian government and promise to respect the laws and sovereignty of Nigeria. They actually went on to put out another one that says we're deeply concerned by the blocking of Twitter in Nigeria. Access to the free and open internet is an essential human right in modern society. We will work to restore access for all those in Nigeria who rely on Twitter to communicate and connect with the world. Some of those are things up there, and for those who still have access, especially if you leave outside Nigeria, you can get to look them up and see where Twitter is headed and where the Nigerian government is also headed on this. And I've been joined by Nnenna Ifeanyi-Ajufo, a lecturer of law and technology, and of course Yusuf Jimoh Aweda, a Microsoft certified technology specialist. Good to have you both join me on the show. Quickly here, Nnenna, Twitter says it's on the discussion table with the Nigerian government, and I'm quite sure you are following development. Do you think the ego of individuals, has been placed on the people's desires at the moment?
Absolutely. It's absolutely a case of where two elephants are fighting, and of course the grass is suffering. But then I think we should look at also the parties involved in this discourse of egos playing out. One is responsible to over 170 million people, while the other is a private tech company, which is not another country, which is not the High Commission of another country. And I think that the Nigerian government is responsible to its people and must think about the fundamental rights of its people. Now, platforms like Twitter allow people to exercise their human rights. It's a question of choice. Human rights are not to be treated like an a la carte menu where you pick and choose what to afford people, what to allow people realize. So digital technology, social media platforms provide means to advocate, defend, and exercise human rights. But unfortunately, they can also be used to suppress, limit, and violate human rights. So while you have the traditional human rights offline, you also have them online. And I think in as much as, yes, it's a question of two egos, absolutely. The question should be the population. And every state has the primary responsibility to ensure the promotion, the realization of the rights of its citizens. And indeed, blanket internet shutdowns, generic blockings like this, and filtering of services online are considered, even by the United Nations, to be a violation of international human rights law. And in this case, we are not just looking at freedom of information, which includes the right to receive, the right to impart, the right to seek information, but ideally, the civil and political rights are also tied to social and economic rights. And you know too well that Twitter goes beyond just exchange of information. Ironically, we tend to bring in cultural perspectives to these discussions. The youths are using Twitter to cause harm. The youths are using Twitter for this and that. But then Twitter is also an avenue for the realization of economic benefits for societal development. So yes, indeed, people are actually suffering the negative impact of this, while two people are just two parties having a face-off of egos here. And I tend to say that I find it also amusing because, with all due respect, it seems like we are exaggerating our importance on a tech company's agenda. This is not a case of an international issue between jurisdictions, between sovereignties. This is a tech company which nobody is actually obligated to have a presence on. So absolutely.
Let me bring in Yusuf Aweda. You've heard Nnenna, and I'm quite sure you also heard our two lawyers earlier on. What does this mean for you as an expert in the field?
Okay, I think there's a concept that is often mixed up. That is the architect of the problem when it comes to the issue of social media, advocacy, social media ban, endeavors of people on the internet. And all of these issues, when you look deeply, you realize that there is a common problem. The root of all of the crisis is the misconception about the concept of freedom of speech. So when you discuss this topic, from beginning to the end, it will come around the concept of freedom of speech. May I emphasize here that the concept of freedom of speech is a mirage. It's not something that is quite true in the world today. What you have is selective adherence and respect to freedom of speech based on your personal agenda, based on your political ideology, and based on personal interest. So if you say that Twitter does represent the technological ambience, or it gives technology ambience for people to actually express themselves, and they give their thoughts on what they believe that is the right thing, Twitter's judgment on what people say will depend on the political inclination of Twitter, their ideological inclination, and their interest in that perspective. That is why you will see that the same scenario that happens in Nigeria, Twitter will look at it from another disposition in another country. If the same scenario occurs in Nigeria, on the other hand, they look at it from another perspective. The same thing we're talking about in Nigeria, the disruption of human endeavor, using social media as a ready to cause violence. Twitter's disposition to it in Nigeria has been very, very bad, and it has amplified the horrendous thought of people to destabilize the country, and it has also gone a long way to bring forth enmity on the social media to disunite the people using technology. Look at what happened in the US, for instance, the issue that happened not quite long, the Capitol Hill. Look at Twitter's disposition to the happening. It was going to lead to annihilation of what is left of US democracy. Twitter sprang on its feet to put a halt, to protect their democracy, to protect the integrity of their existentialism. But in Nigeria, we have an antithesis of that. Should we then say that freedom of speech has got different definition to different
but again, it is an outright ban or depriving everyone, depriving Nnenna, depriving the netman and woman watching, from using the app. Is that the way to go about it?
I think that is a sharp way for the governance, for the government to actually let Twitter know that they actually exist. Because what Twitter has done in Nigeria has never been done in any country in the world. In 2014, so May 19 to be precise, the government of Russia did strictly assert to Twitter to make obscured the tweet from an Ukrainian political activist from the people of Russia. So they told Twitter not to allow the tweet of the guy to be visible to the people of Russia because they felt that it was destabilizing their political cohesion and their sovereignty. So this is something that has happened over time. It's not a new thing that, it has just been given birth to recently. This has been the concept of government all over the world. But because of the fact that we have a problem with our system in Nigeria, which we migrated to the virtual world because people didn't take us seriously. Even leave Twitter and the concept of the fake news we see pretty much on the internet. Don't go back to the terrestrial, information mechanism where we have the television and the radio. Look at the election, for example. You see fake news. People put forth fake news to advocate for their political...
Well, anyway, let me bring... sorry to cut you there, Yusuf. Let me bring back Nnenna because you started off by, more like looking at, on both sides, the pros and the cons. And you also brought the aspect of the United Nations talking about the rights of people. Now, let's look at these deeply, if I can use that word. Do you think what the Nigerian government has done was hastily done in the first place? And of course, with that comment from Twitter, is that also owning up to its mistake of a little bit bias in, not acting the same way they acted with the tweet by President Buhari?
Now, I think we should apportion responsibility. It's unfortunate that the root of the responsibility is not focused on the statement, on the tweet, but rather the reaction by Twitter. Now, ISPs, social media hosts, also have responsibility towards a free, secure, and peaceful internet. We are all agents of justice, including Yusuf, including myself, including you, Sulaima. Now, Twitter has a policy. Social media takedowns do not just happen randomly, arbitrarily on social media platforms. Users are allowed to report tweets. And there are various reasons why people may report tweets. And if you go on Twitter, for example, they ask questions like, is it disrespectful or offensive? Does it include targeted harassment? Is it direct hate against a protected category? The reality of the fact is that speech can be taken positively, it can be taken negatively. Now, we're not talking about a speech between myself and Yusuf, because of course, if you look at Twitter's rules, they tell you that they understand that communication between two people may have, aspects which can be condoned. Again, you have to think about the reputation or the personality of this person making the tweet. This is a leader of the most populous nation. And your citizens say, we do not like this tweet. Look at the tweet, analyze it. For someone like me, I would never want to believe that a president that has regard for his people will imply what people understood it to be. I believe there was a misunderstanding. But then you also owe a responsibility, if you're democratically elected, to clarify people rather than going forward to take a hasty decision. For me, it was hasty. Those are policies that should be thought through. You sit down. Now it seems as if there is a blanket criminalization of social media. Yusuf, this is beyond just Twitter. The next thing, it can be Facebook, because the activities going on Twitter can also go on Facebook. The activities going on Twitter can also go on Instagram. So when we say Twitter has a target, at times I find it very amusing. People reported this tweet. This was not a ban. But then at the point they probably took away the tweet, they did not do due diligence in checking, was it the president of a country? It must have just been the overwhelming report, and they did what was right. Remember, these people have policies. We need to look at this from both sides. Now, the tweet was causing an escalation. The government did not consider a de-escalation. Now, with what was happening on Twitter, clamoring, people reporting, if I was a social media host, I would take down, I would delete. And I think that is the response in society. When you find a balance of necessity or proportionality, you must always consider overwhelming public interest. Remember, Twitter is not here to know who belongs to a tribe, who does not belong to a tribe. So sometimes when we say this, we make it seem like Twitter has some agenda, some suspect agenda. And then I find it very amusing at a time when there is a pandemic, insecurity going on.
You may think it's amusing, but looks like Yusuf thinks differently. Yusuf,
clarify something. Bringing down a tweet on the premise of the magnitude of the frequency of the reports that you got from the tweet is not a legitimate means to actually bring down a tweet. Okay, because in ICT there's something called bots. BOTS. These are programmable artificial intelligence that can create multiple accounts to actually target a tweet and report it repeatedly to make it look bad. So it means technically that when you place your judgment on the magnitude of reports you got from a particular tweet to bring it down, then you are annihilating the very existence of justice. Because to me, I'm going to say it again, I'm not quite meek about it. I've read the president's post, the tweet post, over and over. I've not found anything disrespectful in there. And may I also bring forth to you that in every course of conversation or in any kind of argument like this, it is important to beam our searchlight on the why. Why did the president bring forth such tweets? Because if you just wake up from your sleep and you found out that the Twitter has been taken down, and what was the reason? Because the president's tweet was brought down. The very first thing you will conclude is the president has done a very, very terrible thing by bringing down Twitter. But if you take a back step and ponder on why did the president bring forth such tweets, there were a lot of horrible happenings in the country. People have begun to use Twitter as a virtual platform to recruit online criminals, online terrorists, people who would, pass in fake news to actually, increase the tension in the country. There have been a lot of killings in the southeastern part of Nigeria. There have been lots of kidnappings. There have been lots of, we have lived with insecurity over time. And the advent of Twitter and its
I think this conversation, because I know Nnenna would want to also react to that, but this conversation is actually, almost over. But I'll let Nnenna say something in just some few seconds so that we can close. Nnenna.
Research in a cyber threat center at the Swansea University in the UK. Criminals, cyber terrorists are not only using Twitter, Instagram, all kinds of social media platforms. Yusuf, how about we develop our digital infrastructure to curb cybercriminal activities. Now, what I would end with is, I agree that BOTs can multiply and what have you. Social media hosts, intermediaries, ISPs have a legal responsibility. They can be held secondarily liable if they do not take down illegal content. In cases of defamation, illegal activities, an internet intermediary can be held legally liable if there is a problem.
I think that's another aspect for us to really come back again. Well, in the days to come, we should have both of you again to talk more on these. You know, as the Twitter battle goes on and Nigerians are waiting earnestly to hear from the government to see the way forward, whether the ban will be lifted or whether Twitter will actually make peace with the government of Nigeria. It's only, you know, for us to watch. Basically, well, it's a fine place for us to call it a day today. I'd like to say thank you so much for being such nice company, Nnenna and Yusuf. And I'm Sulaima. I'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.